Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session. We had the time, to discuss a bit, and we shuffled a bit the questions, but hopefully, we'll have an interesting one. Everyone has heard about AI, data. Data is the most important part of AI. A lot of people, they take AI as a synonym to ChatGPT or Copilot, but I think AI is much more, especially around automation, around in government, public services. We're gonna look at it from an angle with cloud, sustainability, and others. So hopefully, you'll find it interesting. So to start with, my first question to Kyriakos, Your Excellency, as an ex-Minister of Innovation and Digital, and you're now part of a reputable technology board in Europe. How has the importance of data changed? And can you tell us how it evolved throughout the years in the context of government?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think that everybody in this room agrees that in the past 10 years, if not more, the importance of data has shifted a lot, and data is the fuel for competitiveness and sustainability at government level, but also at organizational level. I think that I will not spend time to talk that data transform governments through data-driven decision-making or changing the way we provide healthcare services and traffic management in smart cities. Yeah. This is all known. Let's see where we stand today. And where we stand today, we're at the crossroads, because we're entering into the AI era where data is converted into real knowledge. It's actionable when contextualized and analyzed. And for this reason, we see that the power of data is in the hands, not of governments, not of citizens, but also some very limited number of institutions or companies like Google or Amazon. That's not necessarily bad, but we as governments, we need to decide. This is a geopolitical game between countries, but also between continents. Let's look at between, for example, China, United States, and how Europe is squeezed in between without really having the power to react. Let's see how Europe is fragmented. We see Estonia and Nordics like Finland and other countries, or GTS in UK, who are leading the way on exploiting data, but we also see an uneven distribution of power of data in Europe. We see UAE, a clear leadership example of how they use data. So it's a geopolitical game, and we as governments, we need to see how we cope with this kind of battlefield and how we protect our citizens.
Very good, thank you, Kyriakos. And we love geopolitics in the Middle East, as you know. So a question to Ali now, as a Chief Strategy Officer for G42, and your previous roles at Microsoft, executive at Microsoft. Let's talk a bit about data centers. So how AI data centers, as they consume a lot of energy, and how can we contribute to reducing the carbon footprint of the data centers, and any innovative strategies and best practices that you can tell us?
Thank you, Khalid. Good morning, and it's great to be here amongst this distinguished panel and the audience. I think the audience may be asking, what does sustainability have to do with the data panel? But so let's take a step back and first understand, why are we experiencing the AI revolution as we see it today, and why are we entering the intelligent age? There are fundamentally three key drivers. First is the explosion of data. I think you mentioned it earlier, and the MC mentioned data is the new oil. The unit economics of data has shifted since the emergence of the internet because of digitization, because of the acceleration of user-generated content. But here's the other thing, and as Kyriakos also mentioned, data is now a equivalent natural resource. Data is unlimited. Every country has a bounded natural resource, whether it's oil, gold, agriculture, and so on. Any nation today can develop a strategic asset in data. So that's the first driver. The second is the new models and the new algorithms and architectures and deep learning. The third is compute, which is the other currency. And then the fourth really has been enabled recently by energy. The fallacy is that people really focus on sustainability being only an energy issue. So at G42, we're building $1 billion data center in Kenya. It's 100% geothermal. Is that enough? No. We are, our Khazna entity, which builds data centers in the UAE and the Middle East Africa region, uses renewable energy from sustainable. The UAE is a leader in nuclear energy generation. Those are all great things. But let's get back to the question of data. Data is, fundamental to the development of these models. When you build these models, they consume massive amounts of data. That data has to be stored somewhere. That data has to be transferred. That data has to be managed. That data has to be secured. All of these forms actually contribute to sustainability challenges. How you store the data, deduplicating the data retention policies, how you ensure that that data is stored, whether it's cold storage or hot storage. How do you build model efficiency by curating the data up front? How do you ensure that, when you're developing these models, that the traceability of the data and the ethical tracking of that data and sustaining it is really getting from the right locations. All of those are key challenges when you look at sustainability. So the four drivers, Khalil, are interlocked. You cannot think of one or the other. The fallacy really is always people think of, hey, let me go sort out energy. Let me find solar, wind, nuclear fusion. All of them very important. But if you don't think holistically, you're actually solving one piece of the puzzle and you're completely neglecting the bigger picture, because you'll try to solve energy, but you keep generating data that requires more storage. So for example, the UAE being a clear leader, nations that are going to think about the circular economy, how do you take that whole sustainability and even completely recycle the storage equipment, the networking equipment, the data center equipment? That's another factor. So there are a lot of different ideas, a lot of different concepts, but you got to think holistically when it comes to sustainability.
Very good. And of course, sustainability is a big topic that we need to tackle. So Elsa, now to you as director at OECD, which works with more than 100 countries across the globe. And we have now a lot of data and tools that enable government to capitalize on data. What do you see the most significant opportunities for governments to harness the power of data and drive innovation, and especially improving the public services?
Thank you, and good morning to all. Maybe because we have a very enthusiastic panel, and also because I wanted to rebound on the previous panel.
Yes.
Where we heard that citizens' expectations were that government would function as efficiently as the private sector. Maybe start with a word of caution, because we're also looking at failures around the OECD. We have, a repository of failures, including in government. When there's a failure in the private sector about the use of data or the use of artificial intelligence, it's one thing. When you have a big failure in government about the use of data or artificial intelligence, then it's a big deal. You have had scandals about, benefits, social benefits being taken away from families, people being targeted for fraud wrongly, and all of these issues. And then it becomes a huge scandal. So when we say that, government should copy the private sector in terms of speed of the use of data and artificial intelligence, I would just mention a word of caution, because the citizens' expectations about the quality and about, the safeguards around their data when it's government's use are much, much, much bigger. There is a reason why the government is slower than the private sector in implementing these things. So that's my first words. That said, governments need to start using data more efficiently. How do they do that? They do that first by getting the data and getting the right data. So first from users and on their personal data, but also on performance and users' journey and users' experience. So here they tend to do now more and more what we call the once-only principle. You give your data only once. We have about 2/3 of our OECD countries implementing that. Second, they need also to make sure that they're able to share the data across government agencies, and that's very difficult to do for privacy reasons. And third, they need also to make sure that their data are open for use for think tanks, private companies, etc. And we have about half of our countries that have very important sets of data available to the public in general, including with two important cases, France and Korea, which are clearly leaders in this field. But again, I would really like to emphasize this word of caution. Yes, governments have to develop data more and more. This is the future. This is the future of artificial intelligence. But they have to do it with much more care than what the private sector would do.
Very good. Thank you, Elsa. Now, let's go to Italy with you, Mario. As Director General of Digital Italy, you have been deeply involved in the digital transformation of public services there, and especially through national digital identity and cloud adoption, because whenever we say data, AI, cloud. From your experience, can you tell us a bit more about data-driven policy making, how it evolved in Italy, and how other governments can benefit from that, please?
Thank you, and good morning to all. The evolution of a data-driven policy making in Italy has been rapid and significant, especially considering our population of over 59 million. Today, 40 million Italian citizens possess a digital identity, enabling data-driven decision-making. They interact with a unified payment platform, processing over 40 million transactions monthly, amounting to approximately 9 billion euros.
Oh.
So this data allows us to implement targeted policies tailored to the diverse segments of Italian society. And answering to your question, the one crucial lesson we have learned is the importance of nurturing the building blocks of the public digital infrastructure. Elements such as digital identity, e-invoicing, interoperability platform, and payment platform must not only be designed and implemented, but also meticulously maintained, much like the centuries-old olive trees we have in Italy that produce our renowned olive oil. And additionally, and I go to Mr. Kokkinos, additionally, there are still lessons we must learn as Italians and Europeans. We have yet to establish a European hyperscaler cloud, limiting our discussions on digital sovereignty. And this is a big box still in need of ticking.
For all Europe. I liked your analogy with the olive tree also. Whenever we go to Italy, this is what we look for.
And, in this room, we all love
yeah, of course.
Olive oil.
Your Excellency, to go back to yourself, how can governments balance between the need to drive data innovation while at the same time maintaining public trust?
Very difficult. That's my answer. Look, the puzzle between data ethics and data efficiency, we see different approaches from geography to geography. For example, in the United States, they have a culture of permissiveness. So you can do whatever you like as long as you don't violate the law, and the law is very relaxed, or at least appears to be relaxed. In Europe, we overregulate. We go in a different direction. I call it a culture of prohibitive instead of permissive. So prohibitive in Europe, permissive in the States. What is the right thing to do? I believe that you need to find the right balance. None of the two is a good recipe. That's my personal opinion, of course. But if we take good examples from Europe, for example, in Finland, we will see that in Finland, they embedded a mindset, a culture of digital transformation aligned with the social values of the geography. They embedded into the way they think and act as citizens and government. So there is a huge trust in Finland to the government, and in the way that the government treats their data. Now, with the AI now, and all the challenges that we have ahead, whatever we've done in the past, it's history. Now we have to rewrite the book, not just the chapter, a new book on how we manage our way of treating personal data, privacy, fairness. And fairness, I think, is a key word, because trust and privacy, it existed in the past. Fairness now is the new name of the game. We don't have time to go deeper into it, but I certainly believe that with AI in the horizon is how do you treat people fairness and equitably in being able to function within an AI-driven economy, an AI-driven society.
I like that, fairness and maybe agility also, like, you know, how to be agile. So if we go to you, Ali, now, around technical safeguards and best practices that AI companies should implement to protect the sensitive data and build the public trust in a fair way, maybe.
No, fantastic question, Khalil. And just building upon what Elsa said and what His Excellency said, I think this is a foundational piece of work that is a combination of partnership between the technology industry and the regulators. Building public trust in AI systems and in the authenticity and traceability of data is foundational. Without that trust, we are not going to be able to move forward, you know, especially in the age of AI, where, to Elsa's earlier, you know, points, the risks of things like deepfake, fraud, are of massive societal unrest concern. They're really foundational. That said, there are two things, you know, I would lay the framework for. First, there are the known best practices of data governance. You know, everything from data encryption, secure development life cycles, you know, privacy-preserving best practices, you know, audit controls, logging, monitoring, etc. Those are, I would say, kind of table stakes in any organization that is managing data. But then you go into organizations that are leading, and there's organizations established cultural norms where, you know, bottoms up in the culture, there's safety in the culture to come and say, we have a problem with the data. There are cultures that extend and embrace and evolve with the regulators. They bring in the regulators into their organization, and they invite them to meetings, and they have collaborative dialogue, and they say, how do we evolve together so that from the get-go, it is compliant and secure by design and trustworthy by design. Having spent the majority of my career in Microsoft, that cultural shift took a very long time, even in Microsoft. But once Microsoft started building trust first, secure first, compliant first, it shifted the dialogue. It created the trust with enterprises, with consumers, with public, and so on, and that made the company very successful. And now in G42, that is the essence of our approach to AI. The third is, leading into that, we have something in G42 that we call AI for blockchain and blockchain for AI. It's not a play on words. It's actually a very fundamental concept. Blockchain is a distributed ledger technology, you know, developed because of crypto and Bitcoin, but has become a foundational technology in a lot of the smart contracts and everything else. But it's not really very efficient. AI helps in terms of network optimization, smart contract verification, and fraud detection, energy efficiency. You know, how do you mine in a better way? But then blockchain for AI traces the data, number one, allows you to have authenticity of data, security, and safeguard the data. Second, it creates new economic models. You can have decentralized data marketplaces where the data is tokenized. And these data sets, the data owners can then monetize. And now you have a very different economic model, and you have a much more, you know, safeguard. You can then have better audit controls. And then finally, you know, when you work collaboratively with the regulators, and I'm a friend of the regulators in that context, you have, you know, I love the permissive and you know, I'm American, I live in America. I think it's the right balance because, you know, over-regulation causes stagnation and low innovation velocity. Under-regulation causes societal unrest and market imbalance. You really want to strike that balance and have that open dialogue and cultivate the trust.
Very good. Thank you, Ali. So now to Elsa, like, you know, you mentioned societal challenges. So maybe Elsa, like, you know, if you can tell us a bit about how governments effectively are using data to address the pressing societal challenges, such as climate change, public health crisis, or urban planning. And if you can share with us, like, you know, some examples.
Sure. Just before I respond to that, I'd like to also rebound once again on what my two colleagues just said with a few numbers. So we run the OECD survey on the drivers of trust in government, and trust in government in OECD countries, at least, is relatively low these days. But there's one place where governments are doing quite well, is on the fact that citizens believe that their governments are using their personal data well for a majority of people. And this is a very significant asset to protect in the future, At the same time, there is a discrepancy with the fact that citizens think that governments are not using the right evidence for policy making, which means that governments are not speedy enough to catch up with the rate of data creation in the world. So we have to bridge that gap to maintain also confidence in government in the future, while protecting these personal data where the expectations of citizens are really high. So this is a specific government challenge that will be important for the future. Now you ask me for examples of where can be done in societal challenges. I have 4 examples for you here. The first one is the Humanitarian Forum on Flood Response in Nigeria, which provides data on floods and flood-affected areas in Nigeria with yearly updates. The idea of this platform is to strengthen and enhance information sharing and updates on the current flood impact and provide those sharing platforms with all stakeholders. The second one is in India. It's called IUDX, the India Urban Data Exchange, that is completely open source and that aims at exchanging data and information involving 50 cities, 15 industry stakeholders, 8 dedicated use cases, and 776 data resources. Third one important, Uruguay's health data sharing platform, which allows different stakeholders in the health sector to share data, including with the Ministry of Health, very important. And another one, an interesting example from Portugal, where public sector organizations share data on anonymized income and social benefit with private energy providers, which has been also an enormous success in terms of increasing households receiving assistance. Thank you.
Very good. Very good examples. Thank you, Elsa. Mario, now to you, just to understand now, to talk about integration. So what are the key challenges and, of course, opportunities that you have encountered in integrating data across different government agencies? Because integration is a big word, and we want to make sure, that we learn from the integration aspects, that you lived in Digital Italy.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the opportunities are immense. Today, our interoperability platform connects over 8,000 public administrations and public service providers in Italy. And in January 2025 alone, 51 million vouchers were generated between administrations accessing each other's data. The fundamental principle is the once only you mentioned, and meaning public administration should request data from citizens and companies only once, avoiding duplication and ensuring seamless information exchange. And this results in a better user experience with real-time service delivery. The challenges are primarily twofold. Ensuring data quality, it's a big problem. Data quality can be compromised when data remains in isolated silos. And then the evolution of the organizational culture. Unfortunately, data sharing within public administration is often perceived as a loss of power. Robert Douglas before mentioned overcoming friction. This is friction, okay? And so we must face these challenges, and ensuring compliance, security with European regulation is crucial. But the last report by Mario Draghi, former Prime Minister of Italy and former President of the European Central Bank, suggests easing European over-regulation. So regulations are necessary, but also simplification and swift implementation are equally important.
Very good. Thank you, Mario. I think we're running out of time. We still have a lot of questions.
20 seconds
yeah,
for you.
20 seconds. Now, I don't know if you have any last thoughts, anyone?
A lot.
No?
Not in 15 seconds. But,
No, anyway, thank you so much. As we can see, like, you know, we talked about data. It's very much linked to AI. When we look at governments, when we look at integration between governments, we also, like, you know, your example about fairness and about the olive tree, the societal challenges and so on. Like, you know, there's a lot to untap. I'm sure, like, you know, this is gonna evolve over time, and we'll be learning much more. Hopefully, like, you know, next year we'll have, like, you know, even more examples.
1 hour.
1 hour.
Yeah.
We need 1 hour next time. Thank you so much.